Hey everyone, welcome to the DarshanTalks podcast. I am your host, Darshan Kulkarni. As some of you know, I'm an attorney, I'm a pharmacist, I advise companies with FDA regulated products. So if you work for or have an interest in an FDA regulated company or its products, this is the podcast for you. Today's guest is the president of Whitsell Innovations Inc. She refers to it as WI because she's cool and I'm not, and has a background in clinical development. So if you are in regulatory, if you're in clinical, if you're in statistics, you might be someone who's working with medical writers, and you'd care about this because someone like Robin or Robin herself might be working on your next NDA. If you think this is interesting to you, please leave a comment, subscribe. One of the things I do want to also point out is today's guest, which is Robin, has a extensive background in clinical development. So she's not just a medical writer, not that it's a just associated with it, but she has a wide range of experiences. And you can actually reach her. Where can they reach you again, Robin?
So they can reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me at robin.whitsel@whitsellinnovations.com. I recognize it's like the world's longest email address, and I apologize.
Very cool. And ladies and gentlemen, our guest for today, Robin Whitsel. So thank you for coming on, Robin.
Thanks, Darshan. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. So, Robin, talk to me a little bit about just we had a conversation right before we started. And actually, before we start, I should probably introduce what Whitsell Innovations actually is, which is a full-service medical and scientific writing company focused on pharmaceutical, biotech, and device clients. Your employees write regulatory documents from the preclinical stage all the way through the clinical stages, including your IND protocols, IBs, clinical study reports, narratives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You also go into manuscript writing, slide and abstract presentations, sales aids, and module compilations, and also perform literature reviews. You write and edit continuing medical education and book chapters for accredited institutions and firms. So that seems like a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. Well, and we acquired an electronic regulatory publishing company back in 2019. So now we can push through the electronic submission gateway for the FDA with electronic regulatory submissions.
Okay, so you
very
do
exciting.
Soup to literally the nuts.
I guess so.
Apparently, I did discover recently that soup to nuts is not a thing most normal people say anymore. So
it kind of has like I don't know. I would go with end to end.
End to end, way better than soup to nuts,
right?
So let's start with some of the basics, Robin. You obviously have a background in clinical development. When you started with WI, why did you start WI with your background that was slightly different, if you will?
Sure. So my background was clinical development, and my last job before I started WI, I was an assistant director of preclinical and clinical programs at a startup. Okay. And because it was a startup and I was literally like the 20-something employee, like I would just come into work and pretty much everything would be my job. Like, oh, who's going to write that protocol? That'd be you. Yeah. Who's going to work on that manuscript? Still you. Right. So, and then I worked on one compound from IND through NDA. And had worked on plenty of INDs throughout that period as well. So after that experience, after my second daughter was born, I thought, okay, I'll just hang out a shingle. I'll consult. And right away, I had a ton of work. And with this small startup company here in the Research Triangle Park where I'm located, and they discovered that they really needed help with the writing piece. Like that was their big gap. And I looked around and I started seeing more and more companies where the big gap was the writing. And because I had worked for a big pharma, worked for a CRO, worked for a startup, I had seen sort of the sensibilities of each of these companies and what they needed. And so it was easy for me to kind of get more and more work to the point where I thought, I'm in trouble. I either have to clone myself or hire. So that was never really the intent. Yeah. But once it started, it was like, okay. And now that was 2006. And now 54 54 employees later, here we
Wow.
are. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of a crazy journey, but it's been an exciting one. So happy
Okay.
for it.
So you talk about 54 employees, which means that pharma is growing. How has last year been for you, by the way?
Last year was insane. So at the beginning of the year, it's like, what is going to happen, right?
Right.
I think pretty much no one had a playbook for what was going to be 2020, right?
Yeah.
And I I thought, okay, this could go either way. Like all of clinical development could screech to a halt. And specifically, some of the areas that we work in have very fragile patients. I mean, they have cancer, they have heart conditions, and you know, there's in some of them it's maybe the thought is that they can delay treatment or they can, and it was kind of a scary time, like what is going to happen with those clinical trials.
Yeah.
And from an ethical perspective, when you think about somebody who's on chemo, it's really not super ethical to instantly withdraw them from a clinical trial. But many companies were saying, hey, we're not going to start new protocols, we're going to put that on pause so that we can either address COVID or just take care of the people that we have. And I think that was of concern, that we would be in this place where there'd be this huge gap. And so what we ended up doing is the opposite. We thought we'd have less work and we ended up having more. It turned out that people needed more help with how they communicate with the FDA, how they structured their clinical trials, thinking more strategically about some global regulatory communications. Some of our clients who are in Europe had some very different, I guess, challenges associated with their lockdowns than we did. So it was a strange and dynamic time, but I thought a time where we really were able to have a great impact. And my personal passion is the patients and being able to apply what I know to advocate for them. And I think all of us have been a patient or have loved someone or cared for someone who is a patient. So it gives us a great chance as medical writers to bring both that kind of scientific acumen, but that also that advocacy. So it was a cool year and a terrible year all at the same time.
So you raise a couple of interesting things that I want to delve a little bit more into.
Sure.
Let's start with the first one, which is you grew from you
Uh-huh.
to 54 employees
Hmm.
over 15 years. So impressive, kudos for sure.
Thanks.
But I'm sort of coming at it. It's not about. There's no but actually. The question I'm coming. I'm a pharmacist, and one of the things they always talk about is how pharmacists are getting burnt out with their jobs.
Mm,
One of the things they always talk about is how they should consider medical writing as a profession. Um,
absolutely.
what have you worked with pharmacists, and what has your take been?
Oh, we have pharmacists on staff and they're amazing. So they bring an amazing kind of clinical sensibility to what they're working on. Um, I think pharmacists that have worked for WI have enjoyed some of the uh, pharmacovigilance documents we work on, because it really is that that clinical knowledge is really helpful. So I'd say that medical writing is a great job for pharmacists. I think too, pharmacists have a great scientific background and a great understanding of these therapeutic areas and the challenges of them. And they probably have a great understanding of the kind of medications that are already out there.
Mhm.
So when they're working on documents, they can be very collaborative with teams. So we love pharmacists.
So, but let me ask you. I'll tell you my experience with pharmacists.
Okay.
Pharmacists are great clinicians. My experience with them is they need to be trained how to write.
Sure. So you've touched on a very delicate subject, which is that just because you're an awesome scientist and a great clinician doesn't mean you're a great writer.
Right.
And then there's this other huge factor to our job, which has to do with kind of herding cats.
Yeah.
Part of being a medical writer is it's definitely a team sport. You have to get the clinicians, you have to get the statisticians, if you have a kineticist on your team. Everyone's got to kind of row the boat in the same direction. And they have competing priorities. And some of them don't understand that you are a valued member of the team as opposed to the typist.
Right.
So you've kind of got to bring them along and help them understand how to come together to work on any of the documents you're working on. So just being a great scientist or just being a great clinician or even a great clinician and a great writer might not get you all the way there to being a great medical writer.
Thank you. The other thing I have seen with pharmacists, and again, I'm sure a lot of them are listening, a lot of them are my friends, I've been a pharmacist for 20 years. We get spoiled with the really high salaries as we start. Have you had to deal with that? How do you manage expectations?
So I think there is a challenge with that. Like pharmacists do expect really high salaries. I think the other thing is that for some pharmacists, it's about a different life and a different mission. So
Love it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what the pharmacist salaries are right now, so I don't know how competitive we could be. But I think that if part of what you want to do is a different impact, if you want to make a different impact, and then a big value of my company is how well we support our people and how well we support them in the totality of their lives. I mean, you can't bring your best work to the table if you are exhausted and frayed all the time. Yeah. So we have pretty strict kind of thoughts around how much time we will commit a writer to a project. And our billability metric is much lower than the standard of the industry. Like we try to have our people be at or around 75% billable. So the rest of their time they can devote to things like scholarship inside of our industry and submissions of abstracts and papers. And then the parts that are building a youngish company, like I guess we're not so young anymore, but building our company, building our culture. Yeah. We do a lot of internal training. So people develop training for us internally. So it gives them a chance to sort of be fuller people. Yeah. So I think that's like something that perhaps a standard pharmacist job can't offer.
Fair enough. So let me ask you this question. If let's say there's a pharmacist coming out of pharmacy school right now, she's very, very confident being a pharmacist. Mm-hmm. Do you train them to be better writers? Is that something you can pick up? Or do you recommend they go learn writing first and then come to you?
So your question is exceptionally well timed. And I don't know if you know this. So we have an internship program, and we actually are accepting applications through tomorrow. So if she is a phenomenal clinician and she has a passion for medical writing, which if she isn't aware, it's the telling the story of a drug or a patient throughout the clinical development process and beyond. If she has a passion for that, then she should look into our internship, get her resume and a fabulous cover letter together and send it in. And our internship program lasts about, it depends on the person. So we say 18 months, but again, there's opportunities to accelerate that. And it's about a 10-hour-a-week commitment or more if the person wishes. But by the end of that, we've taught them all about the regulations. We've taught them about kind of how to structure the way that you write something in a way that, I'm a big fan of less is more. We have some very wordy clients that we have to try to lead away from lecturing health authority, but like we try to teach them that stuff. And then of course there's like the mundane stuff, like how great are you with Word? Mundane but necessary. So yeah.
Here's an easy question: where do they sign up for the internship?
Right. They look online, whitsellinnovations.com, and it's our careers, and they can click through there. So I think, or they can just send it to careers@whitsellinnovations.com.
So that's at the bottom, is that right? Whitsell Innovations.
That is right. Careers@whitsellinnovations.com or on our website there. Absolutely.
We will change that to say careers at.
Mm-hmm. That's where they can submit a resume and a cover letter. So our internship program is in its 11th year, and we get a lot of applicants. So we get, I don't know, last year was like maybe 80 something.
Wow.
We can take about 4.
So 4. So I think probably. It's you and Harvard has the same acceptance rate then.
I guess so. I guess, but I think it's interesting how applicants, they find us. We've had people that have applied more than once, and it might be the second time that we take them. So I think it depends on the person and if that's the right fit for them, if this is the right path. I know medical writing, it's tough to get into it because the expectations are so high, and you have all these different components. Like, do you understand the regulations? Do you understand the science? How well do you write? And can you lead a team of grumpy people? Not always grumpy, sometimes grumpy.
So, can you lead a team of grumpy people? That should be part of that should be part of the mantra for sure.
Right, or maybe just busy. Let's just go with busy rather than grumpy. Stressed out.
Absolutely. So the other element you kind of raised is this idea of patients and meeting the needs of patients. So let's sort of take a step back there. What is the purpose of Whitsell Innovations?
So we are a medical writing firm, which means that we support life science companies, so pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device. And with those companies, as we're in a regulated industry, they have to perform investigations of their new products prior to selling them. So they conduct clinical trials, as we've been hearing about with COVID for the past year. And those clinical trials start out with a protocol. Well, actually, they start out with what's called an investigational new drug application, as you know. It's basically asking permission from the FDA to conduct a clinical trial. And health authorities around the world have their same version of that document, or those series of documents. And we start out there usually, or sometimes before there, supporting companies with the documents they need. So non-clinical documents where they've been looking at animals, chemistry, manufacturing, and controls, if it's a biologic or a chemical entity where they've been looking at how the stability of this thing or the forced degradation of it. So we help them with structuring any of those documents. The writing piece, like I said, team sport. So it's kind of pulling together these different sources to create a succinct story for a health authority. So the protocol is the study design. And then when the study's over, our best friends, AKA the statisticians, perform the statistical analyses, which will include descriptive statistics, so things like demographics, the age ranges and things like that, and then inferential statistics, things that would give us a signal about, hey, is this a safety concern, or hey, what does this say about efficacy and effectiveness? So it's kind of all of that. I love it. It's great.
So that's the purpose.
The purpose is beautiful communication, which I was long, but beautiful communication.
It was amazing. It was incredible. What I would say, this is how I would describe you. Superstar. But,
I need to hang out with you more often, Darshan. Get a glass of wine, come back, just have a chat. That's the way to do it.
But let me ask you a different version of the question, and I framed it badly the first time around.
Okay.
What you told me is, what does Whitsell Innovation do?
Sure.
What is the mission of Whitsell Innovation?
Oh gosh, so that's a better question. So, I think in terms of our industry, we could do better. We could think about how we interact with patients better, and how we design clinical trials, and how burdensome they can be for the people that carry them out, the clinical investigators and their staff, and the patients who participate. So if I had a mission, if I had one thing I get to pick, it would be sort of a more mindful approach to clinical development. And I think that the health authorities have signaled they want that. The guidances that have come out about patient-centric clinical development are out there, but there's still this sense in our industry of we do things the way we've done them because we've always done them. So there's this fear, if you don't have this extremely dense clinical trial and everything in the kitchen sink, that you might miss something. And so you create something overly burdensome can be created. So I think if I had a mission, it'd be hey, let's think about how to do this just a little better, a little smarter, a little kinder.
So your mission words, if you will, that you're starting from, kindness and just plain better.
Sure.
Sure. Okay, there we go. So let's
You get
raise that.
patient-centric in there too, though.
Oh, patient-centric. So let's talk about patient centricity.
Sure.
When you talk, what do those words mean to you, and how has that word been interpreted for you differently in, say, 2020 versus 2015 versus 2010?
Sure. Well, 2020 is its own year, and let's hope it stays that way. But really,
Well,
for
it's too late.
20,
2021 already
right,
has it, right?
right. Well, the extension of 2020 part two.
Yeah.
But I mean, 2020 kind of introduced the whole world to the concept of clinical trials, right? For the most part, it was fairly invisible. Like drugs just show up at Walgreens. It's not. Wait, you do something to get them there? Do you? Okay, I guess you have to sell them. Maybe the FDA just kind of figures it out. And like, I mean, I had actual conversations with people like, wait, what do you do? That's a thing? And then 2020 came along and everybody's an expert. So yay for that. But really, so patient centricity is this idea of, pharmaceutical companies, ultimately your customer is a patient. And so, and necessarily when you go to develop a medication, the way that you have to think about that might differ than the way it would be actually applied in clinical practice, right? Like, because clinical trials have to answer a specific question, so they have to structure everything as similarly as possible to get to the answer of that question. And so I think patient centricity is kind of thinking about what that impact is for the person that's a hero and is participating in your clinical trial. They're showing up with something that's their health. I mean, you don't get anything more precious than that.
Yeah.
And in some cases, when you think about the COVID clinical trials, those were healthy people saying, okay, sign me up. I want to do something, and that's pretty amazing when you think about it. Like myself, my husband, and my eldest kid all signed up. They didn't pick us, but we all were like, you know what? We've seen what has been written about the compounds that the vaccines they're developing. They sound safe, and if we can all get together behind this and get this thing. So I was willing to be in the clinical trials. I wasn't selected, but I was willing to do it. And I've been in a clinical trial before. So there's that.
How did your participation in a clinical trial change how you operate now?
I would say it just reinforced. So it was all the stuff I thought, like how an informed consent form was written. Is this a dense kind of War and Peace, or is this really direct and clear and straightforward? And it's a struggle. It's a struggle between how much information you need to convey and how to convey it. But I'd say that was influential to me. This was like a silly dermatological clinical trial, so it wasn't like I was on oncology or something deep. But I mean, it was one of those things where I had been on the development side for at least, like at that point, like more than 15 years, and I'm like, I've never actually been in a clinical trial, and so when my dermatologist was like, oh, well, you want to do this? I'm like, oh, okay. So, and it was interesting to me to sort of be on that side of it, because she had no idea what I did for a living, and that, so I mean, like, to her, it was like, so this is what a clinical trial is. This is what we're going to do. And you just sign this form that's 22 pages.
Right. So it tells you what they actually talk to you about in the context.
Oh, yeah.
So as you know, we usually aim for these to be about 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
We've gone over already. But you're the second person I'm going to do this with.
Okay.
We're going to have 6 rapid fire questions for you.
Ooh, ouch. Okay. So be succinct. That's what you're telling me.
Be succinct. It's whatever comes to mind quickly.
Okay, cool.
Okay. What is an accomplishment you're most proud of?
Oh, being the mom of 4 kids, 4 amazing kids, and growing a company while being the mom of 4 amazing kids.
There you go. Who is your heroine or hero, and why?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one. Let's go with Marie Curie because she was an iconoclast, two Nobel
Okay.
Prizes in two distinct disciplines, and in a world that probably did not believe in her one bit. So she had to believe utterly in herself.
I love it. I always find that the answers I get reflect something on the person, on the person. What is your favorite way to give back to your community?
Oh, I'm huge on volunteerism. So I wish we weren't having a pandemic. So when typical year, WI, we do an annual retreat and we fly everybody in because we're all remote across the United States. And one of the things we do is a service project. And we get together and we partner with a local organization so that we're showing up to actually do some good and do something that they need. And I think it's critical to give back. I also serve as a volunteer in different organizations like the Diversity Alliance for Science. I love their mission, I love what they're doing, and I'm happy to step up.
And that's how we met, actually.
Exactly so. Or was it DIA? I can't remember which one.
I honestly don't know. It's one of those. Uh, here's how I asked you this question. How has COVID changed how you balance your work and personal life?
Ugh, not well. So those fabulous kids are like homeschooling here, and it's like rock, paper, scissors, who's doing homework? Like, so am I doing calculus tonight or is that you, honey? And I always get Japanese. So yeah, it's tough. But I think I have to give myself kind of a little bit more grace. You can't do it all, you can't have it all, and
Yeah.
sleep. So that's probably how
Sorry,
it's
the
changed.
advertising on another school there. Uh, I did not go to Jefferson Medical College. I only taught there for a little bit. But okay, Lydia Green says, "Thanks, Robin, for your
Oh,
thoughtful and clear comments."
thanks, Lydia. My
Uh,
pleasure.
now, here's another one. How do you define success?
Wow, these are tough. You're supposed to warn me. So success. So I think success has to do with the person you are every day, the person you show up to be.
No, how
So for
did you
me,
define it for you?
that's how
Yes.
I define it. Like, am I living in the light? Am I showing up
Okay.
and showing up positively for the people around me?
Okay.
Am I calming more chaos than I'm creating for my employees and coworkers and in the lives of my kids? Are they navigating their journey in a way that makes sense for them? Am I able to help them with that? That's success.
That's a lot of things you've got to accomplish to be successful.
You know, I grade on a curve.
I love it. And last question, what challenges you?
What doesn't challenge me? My goodness. So I'm a young soul. I have a lot to learn. Each challenge is kind of a gift. It's like this thing that's wrapped in a package for me to open up and figure out what I need to learn now. So, and I do love a good challenge. I think, you know, I, I think learning new stuff is always cool and great. So when our company takes on something new, that's exciting. Like going through an acquisition was definitely a learning curve for me.
Yeah,
Um, so I think these are all the kind of the challenges I've tried to face. So
that's awesome. I'm going to do a quick recap. Give me a sec.
okay.
So I believe we started off with talking about why you actually started Whitsell Innovations,
Uh-huh.
and and then we actually got into what actually is your purpose and your mission behind it. We
Hmm.
then got into patient centricity, and we talked about what that means to you.
Hmm.
We talked about pharmacists and the actual internship program that you had, and then we did a little bit of a rapid fire round. Did, did I miss anything?
I think you got it all.
Again, nothing in this podcast should be construed as any kind of legal or clinical advice. It was only to educate. For those of you who missed it, Robin, where can you be reached again?
Um, I can be reached link to me on LinkedIn. So I'm Robin Whitsel and the president of Whitsell Innovations. I'm on LinkedIn, and please include a little note so I don't think you're a crazy stalker. And then our company, we're at whitsellinnovations.com. If you're a fabulous medical writer who's in search of a happier home, please come visit us. We're always hiring. Or if you purchase our services, we'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. And if you like this podcast, please leave a comment and subscribe. You can find me at DarshanTalks on Twitter or go to our website at DarshanTalks.com.
I'm at Robin Whitsel on Twitter, so feel free to tweet at me too.
She's at Robin Whitsel on Twitter, guys.
I'm Whitsel.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Darshan.